Welcome, everybody, to Okay But Listen, a raw, unfiltered podcast that breaks through the political echo chambers and amplifies the voices of young people. Today, we have an amazing guest. Her name is Brea Baker. We're going to be getting into what it means to be rooted, literally and politically. Brea has been organizing for nearly a decade. We've seen her, well, I've seen her in spaces such as the Women's March to the halls of Yale. And now she is an amazing author of a book, The American Legacy of Rooted, The American Legacy of Land Theft and the Modern Movement for Black Land Ownership. Brea, how are you today?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me, boo.
No, thank you so much for coming and agreeing to be a guest on our podcast. We really appreciate you. I thought this conversation was more important now than ever because for the past few months, I think a lot of people of color, mainly Black people, have been thinking about what it means to be rooted or what it looks like for them, especially in this very difficult political time and a deep loss post the November election. So I think that the guests in the audience mainly will really enjoy this episode. But before we get into the politics of it all, I would love for the audience to learn a little bit more about you. If you could describe your self or your life in a song or by a song, what would it be?
I feel like the song would be Kendrick Lamar's All Right, We Gonna Be All Right.
Will we, though? Will we be all right, Brea?
I mean, but that's
I'm
the
fighting
point.
for my life every day.
Listen, and we are, and we still gonna be all right.
Okay.
You know, I think a lot of my life and work is to remind us that the word unprecedented gets thrown around a lot, but our ancestors and our elders have survived times that look a lot like this, that have felt bleak, that have felt scary. I mean, literally, we come from people, or I come from people who were treated like property in this country. So the fact that my great-great-great-grandfather had no idea that I could be in a room like this having a conversation with you with the resources and power and platforms that we have shows that things do get better and things also do get worse and we have work to do. But what I love about that song is it's like both feels like a protest anthem, but it also just centers joy and affirmation. And I think that's something that happened coming out of this last election too, was Black people just reminding themselves like, look, stuff is bad right now, but we're going to line dance. We're going to go to the concerts. We're going to find time for our joy and see what that unlocks. And I think we've seen films and music and written word unlocking so much for us and reminding us that we do have more power than they want us to think that we have.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned were, you know, the ancestors. And, you know, it always reminds me of the topic reparations.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people politically have these mixed feelings, mainly Black people, about reparations and really what it looks like.
Yeah.
And how critical, and I don't think they realize how critical it is to, you know, not only economic freedom, but also racial and environmental justice policy in our country right now. But what's something consistently that people get wrong about reparations, mainly people of color?
Yeah, I think that Black people and non-Black people of color alike will get wrong this idea of it's a handout. So I even will talk to some Black people who are like, nah, I just want to get out the mud. I don't even want what they got to give me. And it's like, it's not what they got to give you. It's what, again, the people that you come from already worked for and had robbed from them. And you deserve to have your take back moment, have your reclamation moment. You know, there's two things I say. One is there's a quote by the Nap Ministry, I think she calls herself the Nat Bishop. I love her.
Yes,
Yes. And she talks about being, I am my ancestors' debt collector. And I love that quote because it just reiterates, like, we're not asking for anything that has not been earned. We're asking for something that we should have inherited generations ago, that should have grown with time and accumulated with time. And so we have been forced to work twice as hard, if not more, than we should be having to work because it's been stolen. So it's a reclamation. And then the other thing is you can't outwork theft. And I think that's a misconception too, this idea that, oh, well, you know, no one alive today owned slaves. So why are we still talking about reparations? Money doesn't disappear. People die, you know, systems die sometimes, but money does not disappear into thin air. The money that was made by our ancestors who were forced to work against their will for free has grown and evolved. It's been in endowments and trust funds and property and land holdings. And we have been robbed for the opportunity to benefit from that birthright. So yeah, I want that back. Absolutely. I don't care how good you've gotten it on your own. That's a product of your ambition. But your ancestors' ambition was robbed, and you deserve to get something from that. So I think that's important for people to recognize.
And I also think it's important to highlight, because this is something that Jada and Hunter were talking to me about, who are part of our team. Like, Black people, like, there have been other people in this country that have received reparations.
Yes.
It's not like reparations has not been given to other communities.
Mm-hmm.
It's like reparations has been given to a lot of communities, with the exception of Black people.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's so important to say, because there are some really great Japanese American allies in this fight, especially elders in the community who did get reparations for Japanese internment that happened during World War II. If people remember, Japanese Americans were taken from their homes, put in work camps, had their property taken from them. And after World War II ended, there was a conversation about returning the lost assets, returning the lost wages, returning the lost time to people. And that did happen. And it doesn't mean that it's ever been perfect. You know, like, I think another misconception that gets brought up is like, oh, well, Native Americans got this, and how come we didn't get that? And I mean, Native Americans deserve way more than they've gotten. I think some people believe, oh, Black people don't deserve reparations because that's what affirmative action is. No, it's not. White women have benefited more from affirmative action than any Black person has. And that's just like a statistical fact. So we absolutely deserve more. But even beyond the like confines of our borders, reparations is an international idea that has happened many other places. Rwanda has done reparations for their genocide. Germany and many European nations have had to give reparations for the Holocaust. South Africa has had to invest in some sort of political reparations and truth and reconciliation for apartheid. Again, has not been a perfect process, and Black people in South Africa deserve more, but it's to show that other countries are starting these processes and digging into it, and America is like, no, I don't want to. And it's like, well, with each generation that you don't do it, it's compounding interest now. Mm. Because now my children and your children and their children, potentially, if we don't get this right, are also going to have they're not going to benefit from the leg up that they should be benefiting from. And they're going to compete against people who got a leg up that they didn't earn.
It makes me think about, and I don't know if you would necessarily call this reparations, but even like Haiti, mm-hmm. I think the conversation that's happening right now when it comes to Haiti and, you know, the French government and like all of their things all across the globe, honestly. And like the fact that Haiti is like, well, what if we got our money back? Yep. And like, what would that mean for our country and the next generation of Haitians?
Absolutely. I definitely think of that as reparations. I think, and that's the beautiful thing, is like, I want the whole African diaspora to start thinking about reparations, because we've all had stuff stolen from us. If you're still on the continent, you've been a victim of colonization. You've been a victim of gold and diamond and oil and coal mining and all sorts of wealth being taken from your country. If you are a Black person who is in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Haiti, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, either Britain or France, if you're in Latin America, Portugal, Spain, one of them countries is making off with your wealth, with your jewels, with your memories. And so I think there's definitely a conversation around the fact that, number one, Black Haitians were forced to pay quote unquote reparations to the French mm-hmm. when they were freed. So yeah, they deserve that money back plus their own actual reparations. But there are a lot of Caribbean nations who are saying, like, we don't want to be under the British crown anymore. We want our own heads of state. Actually, why is our archives in the British Museum? We want that stuff back too. That's also part of reparations. And like, I think us in America, we need to be having that conversation too. A lot of wealth was built in the South by Black Americans. This country is the richest country in the world because of it. It would not have been if they had to pay fair wages. So let's just keep it a buck. If Black Americans wanted full reparations, it would bankrupt this country, because none of this wealth would exist without us. So anything we're asking for is really a discount, and people should be really grateful that we're not asking for more.
Yeah. And so two things, because I do want to ask, and I kept telling you, like, girl, I'm really excited to ask you about like what's happening right now in Africa.
Yes.
And, you know, what it is that we're seeing from places like Burkina Faso, but also other countries and leaders kind of standing up. And I honestly think it's the young generation. Like, young people in these countries are like, you know what? We are tired of this. Like,
Yeah.
we want a leadership that's going to stand up for us and demand an investment in our future.
Yeah.
And that does not look like giving away all of our natural resources for pennies on the dollar or the franc, was it franc?
Right,
or,
exactly.
you know, the pounds,
Pounds,
whatever.
yep.
We want all of our money. And I think that what we're witnessing right now could be the rise of Africa. I think many leaders have tried. Many of them have lost their lives trying. But I am hopeful because I think that this is something that's not only invigorating young people on the continent, but also young people of color across the globe from the diaspora, as you were saying, who are like, no, we're do what we're owed. Yeah,
I get so inspired. I get chills. Even just like when you were talking about it, I'm like, yes, I really do think the young generation is insisting, like, you know, this idea that the African continent as a whole is this third world place. It's like, no, we actually are the epicenter of a lot of wealth. Most of the diamond reserves are on the African continent. A lot of gold reserves are on the African continent. A lot of wealth has been made in Africa, but not by Africans.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, why are Black Africans not benefiting from it? And you have Europeans pretending to be Africans who are making all of the wealth. And that's what we see in like South Africa, which we were talking about and we can dig into even more. But yeah, what's happening in Burkina Faso is so inspiring. And I think it's also, again, a reminder of why we have to tap into the strength of our elders and our ancestors, because when I was like young and coming up and just reading and on my revolutionary-ish, like I remember being so inspired by a few people, a Malcolm X in the US, Che Guevara and Fidel Castro in Cuba, and Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. And Thomas Sankara was trying to do a lot of what Ibrahim Traoré is doing now in Burkina Faso. He was assassinated. And I think they realize, like, when you're trying to do revolutionary stuff, you have to be ready to defend your revolution, defend your country. And it's so beautiful to see Ibrahim Traoré doing that right now in Burkina Faso, to have the country behind him and to defend it and say, we actually, hands off us. We don't need your influence. We don't need your insight. We don't need your expertise, because look where your expertise got us. We know what this looks like. We're going to invest in literacy and education for our young people. We're going to take control of our minds and our wealth and our industries. We're going to start denying World Bank, donations and aid from other places, because we're not your charity handout. You know what? I would love to see more African nations talking about and doing this. And I think, again, like you said, it's starting. And I think we're in this era where it's going to continue to happen, where African nations are like, stop giving us your secondhand clothes. We have textile industries. We don't need that. Like, this idea that everyone in our country is like a poor orphan with flies, like, that's not our narrative. And it doesn't have to be our narrative if we strengthen up our local farmers, our local teachers, our local industries, and build up more business for ourselves and stop being treated like we just get your scraps from the West.
Yeah. And it excites me because I remember growing up, when I thought about like the UAE, I thought about just deserts. And like now when you think about the UAE, you don't just think about deserts.
Gold,
I think of,
well, it on a yacht in Dubai.
Yes. And when I think about even Asia and how far it's come, I think that, what we are witnessing now could be the rise of a great thing. So
yes,
super excited to see, what happens in Africa and how that impacts, the diaspora as a whole.
Yeah, me too.
But I know beyond reparations and, of course, the book, which we'll talk a little bit more about, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the work that you did around gun violence and gun violence prevention. I ended up getting my start organizing and mobilizing in my community around gun violence in DeKalb County, Georgia. Well, you here, girl, over there in Decatur, Stone Mountain area. Yes. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about community healing and the fact that oftentimes we continue to ignore gun violence and the fact that it is an epidemic.
Yeah.
And so if you can, like, what do you wish people knew more about when it comes to everyday gun violence and how it impacts communities of color, mainly Black people in America?
Yeah. I think number one is I want people to realize that Black people are impacted by gun violence in more ways than this just gang violence.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when we talk about gun violence in Black and brown communities, it's it's framed in that way, which I think is done to frame Black both victims and purveyors of violence as like, oh, well, you just live in a Chirac, you live in a war zone, which can be true in some areas, and it's not to take away from communities that are really dealing with that in a really big way. But Black communities are also dealing with domestic violence, gun violence, police brutality, gun violence, suicide gun violence, accidental gun violence. My best friend's nephew was killed because they were playing with a gun that they shouldn't have had access to because it wasn't put away properly. That was a gun that was in the house for protection, and so they were not involved in a gang. They were not targeted by a gang. They were kids who were playing with something that they didn't understand and that should have been protected from them and wasn't. And so I think it's just to show that like gun violence in our communities is not monolithic. That's just like number one. But number two, so much of the national conversation around gun violence affecting young people is school shootings.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is what I learned in doing this work around gun violence is that most school shootings happen in predominantly white schools and neighborhoods. But the militarization that comes from it happens in our communities. Even when I was growing up, we would have to go through bag checks and metal detectors depending on the time of year that it was. We couldn't bring book bags if it was Halloween or the last week of school. Now it's gotten even worse. It's like all year round, metal detectors, no matter what time of the year it is. And in doing like this gun violence work, realizing that really happened after the Columbine shooting, which was not in a predominantly Black or brown community, but a lot of the funding towards militarizing schools went to our schools.
Yeah.
So now our schools feel like prisons and jails, and it, leads into that like school to prison pipeline narrative, but that's not keeping us safe because that wasn't really the threat against us. And what I would love to see more in our communities are gun buyback programs or an investment in other things that keep us safe. Because ultimately, people have guns in their house because they're worried about home invasions or break-ins or whatever the case may be. And so just making sure that people have pathways to feeling safe that don't depend on having a gun in the home, that could be discharged in the middle of a domestic violence dispute, that could be discharged by kids who are playing around with something and think they cool. It could be, by somebody who is dealing with mental health and decides that they want to end it all. So I think that those are really important to say because our kids are not monsters, are not super predators or super villains, as some politicians have been saying for the last several decades.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents of these kids want what every other parent wants, which is for their kids to grow up and have opportunity and joy and safety and love. And sometimes we think that having a weapon in the house protects us, and it can make some of us even more vulnerable than it actually does get used to protect us. So that's a big one. It's like, especially with the youth gun violence work that I've been doing, a lot of the conversations around mass shootings, which is important to address because it's happened more and more commonly. I mean, even for the Atlanta community, a brilliant Mays High School graduate, Clark Atlanta graduate, was just killed. She was a dean of a college in California, I believe, and she was just shot and killed in a targeted act of gun violence on her campus that was deemed a mass shooting. So it's not to say we're not affected by it at all.
Girl, I was in a mass shooting. Me and Jada were at UNLV when there was a mass shooting, like literally 2 years ago. And the crazy thing is, this is going to sound crazy, Brea. Do I say this for the uncancelable segment? When I look back at it now, I can laugh about the whole situation just because I'm like, Jada, we were really in some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But when it was happening, I was literally looking at Jada. Jada was looking at me. I'm like, girl, we're the adults. Like, we are the adults. We are the adults. Everybody is looking in this room. It's like 80 people. They are all looking at us in this room like,
what do we do?
What are we going to do? And me and Jada are like, I don't know what to do. Girl, we had to figure it out. But we were in there for about 45 minutes. And the crazy thing is, like, as everything was going on, I think we asked one of the kids, the school was sending updates on where the active shooter was. So we asked one of the kids, well, where's the shooter? And they're like, oh, he's right across the park. Like, he's right across the parking garage. And girl,
what?
Yes, it was literally the crazy. And I'm like, the first time that we ever went to this particular college.
Oh my gosh.
And we were actually about to go into the courtyard where he was for lunch, like literally walking out. And I had to go to the bathroom. This is the funny part. Wow. I had to go to the bathroom, Brea. And I was like, Jada, I'm going to go to the bathroom. She's like, no, girl, let's just wait till lunch. Free go to the bathroom. The whole time the shooting was going on, I literally had to pee. But the funny part about it is I literally looked at Jada and I said, if I pee in here, will anybody know that I peed? And she said, well, if we survive the shooting, then everyone's going to remember that you peed. So you have to hold it. So that's the funny part. But I did, like, a girl, that was all I could think about the whole time.
I feel like people should have understood.
For 45, girl, I didn't. Jada said, you better freaking pee in here. But I really wanted to so bad. But beyond that.
So crazy.
But beyond that, gun violence, you know, I think it's really important, like what you were saying, to kind of like highlight the fact that it impacts us in different ways, even beyond the mass shootings, you know. And again, like, I lost an uncle literally recently due to domestic violence. I've lost a sibling due to gun violence. Like, it's real, and it impacts our communities in so many ways. So I do want to thank you for the work that you continue to do and like raise around gun violence and gun violence prevention. And I know you were a part of the 2018 walkouts. Can you talk to me a little bit, or us a little bit, about that?
Yes. Okay. So I had been a part of Women's March prior to that, the 2017 National Women's March. And after organizing that, we were trying to build infrastructure for organizing. People who were saying, like, well, I have an issue that I care about and want to organize in my community. And so we were in the process of organizing a women's convention. And then not long after that was the Parkland shooting in February of 2018. And so the students of Parkland were organizing the March for Our Lives, action in DC. And then there were Black and brown kids around the country who were just like, you know, there's so much visibility, there's so much attention, there's so much money right now being funneled into this organizing, as it should be. And this is not to take away from them. They experienced something super, super traumatic, and it just happened to like consume the nation.
Yeah.
But there's so many kids who are just like, why does our trauma, why does our pain, why does the violence that affects us not get a light shown on it in this way? And so Women's March, because it had the infrastructure, was like, let's support young people in organizing in the ways they want to. And instead of, trying to replicate what March for Our Lives is doing, let them do their march in DC. What we really wanted to push was for young people to organize in their communities so that we could acknowledge that, like, gun violence does not look any one way.
Yeah.
That it is very different in very different communities. You have some communities with very strong gun legislation, like, for example, New York, which you still have gun violence in. And so a lot of the gun violence work there is like violence interruption work, and,
Erica Ford, I Love My Life.
Erica Ford of Life Camp. GMAC is another one. Gangsters Making Astronomical Change for the Community, I think is what it stands for. And so there's a lot of SOS. And so there are a lot of gun violence interventionist groups there. Same with, like, in Chicago, with like Taking Back Our Blocks and like trying to prevent gun violence in those ways. But in other communities, it looks very different. In rural communities where people are hunting and, anyway, just making sure that young people could organize in their communities the way that they needed to, and for policy that they needed in their local spaces. And so we organized this, I believe, 1.2 million students participated around the country. It was so powerful. In the lead up to the walkouts, we had weekly national calls where I was like the executive advisor for the action. There were a few other advisors, and we would just like train them, teach them like how to decide, like, what are your demands, how to work with your school administration so that students don't have to worry about getting suspended or like disciplinary actions for this. And if you are going to face disciplinary actions, like how to get support with that, how to get legal support, how to get media attention, how to make sure that this is just not an act of symbolism, but that you actually get something passed, whether it's your school is going to now, monitor entrances and exits more carefully, whether your school is going to invest in, and for example, in my community, and this is something we still need to work on, in my hometown in New York, our local rec center hosts gun shows every year. Mm. That's crazy to me. Someone can come in unarmed, buy a gun at the gun show, and do anything they wanted in a building full of young people who are there to swim and ice skate and do whatever the case may be. And so trying to like say, okay, can we get our town to stop hosting those shows, or at least host it in a secure facility where ammunition is also not sold, so that someone could not come in, buy the things, and turn it into a bloodbath. Yeah. So we were really like helping students to really think, what does gun violence look like in your community? What are the demands that you want to make of your school administrators, of your elected officials, of whatever the case may be? And so we had students as young as middle school and even like older elementary school students, like fourth graders, putting together press kits for media. They would walk out of their classes. They did a, moment of silence. They would, for the older kids who were in high school, registering them to vote, talking about upcoming local elections or ballot initiatives. And it's a really, really powerful moment where I think a lot of people realize, like, yes, actions in DC are cool. Again, I had been part of the 2017 Women's March. I attended March for Our Lives, just like in the audience. But it's also really important to organize in your community because it's a community you know well. Like, trying to change Congress's mind takes a lot of inside-outside strategy. It could be years and years and years of organizing to get something passed in Congress. You could get something passed at your local city council in months. You could get your school board and your school administrators to make a decision in weeks and days. And that kind of power happens when you locally come together and decide, like, we're trying to make this change happen here. And then this could be a blueprint from other places too. And we can spread this and take it wide. But if all we can do is start here, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, we talked about a lot of deep stuff, but we're going to get into my favorite segment, which is called Uncancelable. So I'm going to ask you some questions and you'll let me know what your feelings are about said question.
Okay. So that means that I'm uncancelable. Like, I could be.
Yeah, like, girl,
totally honest.
Tell us the tea.
Okay.
Like, let us know.
Okay.
So we kind of grew up in this. LOL. This is tea, y'all. So we kind of grew up in this, and I'm interested in knowing, like, what is the craziest thing that is ever, like, what's the craziest thing you ever heard on, like, a coalition call? You don't have to say names. We don't have to put names to it. But, like, what's the craziest thing where you were just like, wait, is this really life right now? Like, what's happening on said coalition call?
Most of my craziest coalition moments did happen during Women's March.
Okay.
Because people were so angry the first time that Trump got elected. And you had white women who were just like, this is my first protest or whatever. And I'm just sitting there like, you are old. Why is this your first protest? Like, you've lived through Black Lives Matter. You lived through Occupy Wall Street. You lived through the 70s. Like, why is this your first protest? I would like certain things like that would be really confusing. Like 50 and 60-year-old white women talking about, I've never had to come out before, but this is the moment. And I'm like, you've never been angry at things that your government has been letting happen or has been doing. So I think that was definitely crazy. I think anytime anti-Semitism gets weaponized against Black people is always crazy, as if we don't understand oppression and how it works. And again, anti-Semitism is real, so I will say that. But when it gets weaponized, it's like, it's the version of white women's tears. And it's so frustrating to sit there and have a whole conversation derailed because someone is making an accusation that is just like, what? That don't got nothing to do with what we talking about right now. Like, you just saying stuff just to recenter yourself. That also happens in like queer coalitions that I'm in. But like, I'm white and gay, and it's like, okay, and I'm Black and gay. Now what? Now where we at? I win. Like two to your one. So yeah, I just feel like those are some of the
craziest thing you heard in that coalition call. Okay, what's the most? What makes you cringe about how companies try to show solidarity? And I think it's interesting now because, like, companies tried to show solidarity in 2020 and now in 2025 they're like secretly firing their DEI professionals and turning their back on our communities without making the investments that they promised to make. So what do you think is like the cringiest thing about how companies show solidarity?
Well, you brought up 2020, that kente cloth moment.
Who did kente cloth? I don't even remember that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody was doing it. So first it was Nancy Pelosi, and she had on the kente
I remember the kente cloth. I remember the kente cloth.
And I was like, what? But then Walmart put out like a whole line of kente cloth Juneteenth stuff, and it was just like,
do you think this? Do you really, or was it the rise of Ghana in 2019? I'm being funny. But everybody and their mama was in Ghana in 2019. So maybe that's why they wanted to wear a little kente. I don't know.
I was just like, Again, y'all gonna put it on the shelves, but where the Black people at in your corporate office? Where's the investment in us? Like, you just gonna throw a little Kensington cloth in there, or like going to a pride parade and it's like cops with a rainbow flag, and it's like, this was all started because y'all were being homophobic. Like, police were being homophobic, and that's where Stonewall and queer liberation work started. Like, it's just always so confusing. Or no, wait, this is probably the best one. At one pride parade I went to, they legit had, like some of the police forces are starting with the robot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They had a robot dog with a rainbow flag on it. And I was just like, wow, they AI-ing the liberation stuff. Like, not the robot dog.
Yeah.
Like, it's just too much. And it's just so fake. Like, okay, you just slapped a flag on something and that's, now I feel safer. I feel better. Like, actually, why you got a robot dog? Like, I don't even know why you even spent some money on that.
I don't know. Listen, I really don't know. And I'm also interested in, like, I guess my last question, it's not on here, girl. Don't kill me. But I don't know. How do you feel about cancel culture? I feel like recently I made a comment online about LOL, don't kill me, Brea. Okay. But
that's uncancelable. Uncancelable. We get real.
So I made a comment. I was like, what happened to the Republican Party? Like, George Bush, Romney, McCain, like, they had better values, in my opinion, than like what we're seeing right now in the current president. And like, people were like, you're romanticizing George Bush and blah. I'm like, whoever said that? Did I ever say that George Bush was the greatest president walking the history of our, like, no one said that. What I said is like, where was the disconnect? Because I think there's a difference between like a conservative in the Republican Party and like someone who's like MAGA and like Make America. Like, what happened to the Republican Party? Because these were individuals who would allow dissent. I think now it's like, if you don't agree with me, like, it's over for you. Yeah, like it's over for you.
I think MAGA just like, they really took the hoods off. It was like, rip me out the Klan robe, I'm acting brand new. They were I think they just wanted an excuse to not have to be politically correct. And I think, remember, this is also coming after, their attacks on the word woke, on critical race theory. It was just this idea of like, I'm tired of having to say the right things. I'm tired of having to have decent conversations where, we're okay to disagree with one another or whatever the case may be. I just want to be offensive. I just want to be blatant. I just want to talk how I talk when I'm around the bonfire with my beer and my buddies and, whatever. And so I just think they wanted an excuse. And I think that's the difference is like, number one, this shows why America needs to have a more than two-party system. Because within the Republican Party, you have the people who are like, fiscally conservative, but like on the surface are, they have couth and they have decorum, they have degrees and all this other stuff. And that being very different from the like, quote unquote redneck, like, I just want these Black folks out of here, like, and they ain't saying it like that. They're using the slurs and everything. But like, so I just think that you had people pretending to be a part of the same party, and Trump gave that second group the excuse to take up more space. And now they don't know what to do with him. Because, like, I remember watching like old footage of John McCain and Barack Obama's election. And I remember in that moment feeling like, we got to get Obama in there. Forget John McCain. But now looking back, John McCain was at like a town hall and someone was like, well, I just don't like that Obama and, his middle name's Hussein and he must be a terrorist. And John McCain was like, we're not going to do that. He's not a terrorist. He's a good, decent family man. And just because I disagree with him on these policies does not mean we're going to tear down his character. You will never get that back again. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene. We got Trump.
Girl, and I'm in Georgia. Well, you're in Georgia, girl. We are fighting for our lives down here.
Literally, it's insane. And so now it's so adversarial. It's so aggressive. And that side just wants to say whatever they want to say and just pick a fight with everything. And so, I don't know where that energy came from, but I just think that like certain Republicans just got tired of pretending that it was only about being, policy differences. And they really were hateful. And Trump gave them a reason to be proud of being hateful again.
And one of the things just like really blowing me is that this was once a party that promoted free speech. Mm-hmm. Oh, and now is like preventing free speech.
Yeah, they used to be the party of free speech, and Trump is like, yeah, I'm taking college funding away because of this. And, even, a broke clock is right twice a day. Even Candace Owens was like, this is insane for our party to be pulling funding because we don't like the curriculums. Like, that's just not what we do. So yeah, it's just wild to see the transformation. But I will say, I feel like you only caught that stray because other people have been romanticizing some of those eras. Like George Bush, I remember he was getting brought on the Ellen DeGeneres show to talk about how he loves to paint. People would be like, oh my God, I love seeing George Bush's friendship with Michelle Obama because they were at some event laughing and snickering with one another. And it's just like, okay, but George Bush is still the one behind Hurricane Katrina. George Bush is still the one who stole the election from Al Gore. George Bush is still anti-science. That man is still a maniac. And it's wild to think it kept getting worse, and that the Republican Party has been just taken over by people who get on national television, who get in front of a podium and will say the most vile stuff and still get elected and then do whatever they want. The fact that Trump is on his second term and does not have the same vice president. That is unheard of. Your old vice president wants nothing to do with you. Your old administration were denouncing you and didn't want to endorse you for this election, and you still won.
Yeah.
It just shows where the Republican Party's headed.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in moving into a different discussion around the digital rage and how we're able to turn it into real change.
Okay.
Mainly because this is something that we're looking more into. In 2024, a lot of young people really just didn't show up.
Yeah.
And the ones that did vote didn't vote how we kind of expected them to, with the exception of young Black voters.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think we have to do a lot more when it comes to being a little bit more engaged online, but then also changing that online engagement into real world change. And so what's something that you've learned from your early days on the front lines that you still carry into your work now? And how have you also kind of, taken that into online to mobilize more young people and meet them where they are?
One of the first things I learned about organizing, and this is why I think mentorship and being cultivated by elders and just more seasoned organizing you is so important, is that organizing is a conversation. And I think right now, so much of the way that politics and electoral and get out the vote work is happening is it's marketing. It's I'm talking at you or to you, but I'm not waiting to hear from you. And that's never going to leave someone feeling satisfied. I think that's why a lot of young people didn't show up, is this idea of you're telling me who to vote for. You're not giving me a chance to tell you what I want to see from that person. Or when I do tell you what I want to see from that person, you're telling me we don't have time for that. Just show up and we'll talk about that later. And that's not a good strategy. And I'm not just talking about on the presidential level. I mean, local politics as well. If we want people to show up for Senate races, gubernatorial races, mayoral, school board, judges, if we want people to show up for these races, you have to tell them, what will this person in this position be able to do for me? What power do they have? What power do they not have? Let's be honest about the power they don't have, but then talk about the opportunities that are there. Yeah. And I think it's so frustrating as someone who wants to see progressives within the Democratic Party win, but the Democratic Party only wants to talk at people. And what's especially frustrating is Black people of all ages show up time and time again. But every election cycle, the narrative is, well, if y'all wait in line for sneakers, y'all better be in line to vote. We do. We do vote. Why are people acting like Black people don't show up? We show up, and we show up in the numbers that people want us to, including Black men. And I think that was something that was also frustrating about this last era.
This past election, I think everyone was just beating down on the Black man.
Oh my gosh, it was
crazy. Their move towards Trump, their potential the potential of them not showing up and not voting. And while Trump did make some gains when it comes to African American men, I just don't think it was so large. It didn't look like any other demographic.
Right.
At the end of the day had to end, and the Black community showed up and voted for progress, regardless of what anyone has to say.
The only group that voted better than Black men for the Democratic Party were Black women. So I don't want to hear a white person of any gender, a Latino person of any gender, an Asian person of any gender, talking about what Black men need or don't need to do. Black men voted better than every group except for Black women. 88%, I believe, in favor of Kamala Harris. No one else was anywhere close. Our Latino family were in the 50%. White women voting 50% for Trump. Like, no one else got anywhere close. So I think that's frustrating when you're doing the right thing for the most part. And all you hear is, y'all are misogynists, y'all are this, y'all are that. And it's not to say that there were not also that. I mean, there were some people I was like, take the podcast mic. You know,
oh, God.
Take
podcast
the mic.
culture.
Take the mic.
Yeah.
But that was, in the grand scheme, like you said, they did not make the headway that warranted how much that Black men were attacked. And so I think what that does is if I'm doing the right thing, it's like, okay, this is something I used to hate. Like, you growing up and, you know, okay, do the dishes. Yes, ma'am. And then somebody walks back into the room. I said, do them dishes. You don't see me with a dish in my hand, washing it. Like, now I don't want to do the dishes. Now I want to put the dishes down and walk away and leave the kitchen a mess because I'm doing what you told me to do and you're still yelling at me. And I think that's something that's demoralizing. And you're not talking to Black men and saying, what can the Democratic Party do for you? How can we make you feel more seen and more heard? I think Black women are in a very similar state. And I think the challenge is that because the narrative is listen to Black women, people think that the Democratic Party actually is listening to Black women. But the Democratic Party has not shown up for Black women getting elected. Stacey Abrams, Sherry Beasley, Kamala Harris. Like, Black women are kind of on our own too. We just get the brunt of, okay, now it's time to like market to Black women and make sure that they show up to vote. But like, where are our positions of power? Where's our opportunity to take up space and be protected? Jasmine Crockett be out there fighting for her life out there, and it just be AOC and
Bernie Sanders
and Bernie Sanders to come to her defense.
And Uncle Bernie's been fighting a good fight for a long time. I just want him to rest.
I do.
Give Uncle Bernie his last good years,
right?
And let him rest.
He's trying to pass batons, and I see him, you know, doing his tours at AOC and whatnot.
And then I also ask myself, well, if it's not Uncle Bernie, then who?
Right.
Like, honestly, when you think about who has the power to unapologetically say and do certain things, he holds a lot of that. Like even his criticisms aren't to the extent of Jasmine Crockett and AOC.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I just feel like I wish I could go back in time to 2016 and just the primaries of 2016 and do things so differently. Because even like when young people and Black people and working class people were showing up excited and energized by Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party didn't know what to do with it. And they forced a candidate that Black people did come out for in the end.
I think the same thing happened in 2020.
Yeah. They forced Biden.
I think a lot of people did feel as if, I think it was just a lot. Because it's kind of like, a lot of people were saying, and I honestly think it was people at the top. It wasn't even really people on the ground that were no to Biden.
Yeah.
It was a lot of people at the top who kind of like made that decision and then kind of did the switcheroo. And at first I felt really bad for Vice President Harris because I kind of felt like they're throwing my girl to the wolves. Like, she's fighting for her life. We only got a few months of this, like, you know.
I think they should have done it a long time before.
Yeah, that was the thing.
That was the thing.
That was the thing.
By the time they did it, it did feel like a coup, but they should have done it earlier. Because it was like Biden had won in 2020 because the Trump administration had been that bad. And we're in a global pandemic. And George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and so many other moments had just happened. There was so much energy. I think we would have voted in a folding chair. At that point, we would have voted anybody in.
Maybe we could have got our chair from Alabama.
I would vote for that chair. I would vote for that white folding chair in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
for real. But yeah, I think they tried to do 2020 again. And by the time they realized like, oh, there's not a lot of energy right now. And then they tried to do, like a last
topic even. Because it's kind of like, you know, and LOL, one of our guests from our previous episodes, who is a Republican, was like, you know, the conversation coming from the Democratic Party was like Trump and saving our democracy.
Yeah.
And the people on the ground were like, we just want to pay rent.
Right.
Like, we're hungry and like eggs are egging and we just want to survive. And that was the real issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, we did feel the hope. We were excited about the hope, but that wasn't enough to like get us over the edge.
Absolutely.
People on the ground were really just trying to figure out how they were going to, they weren't even thinking about our democracy. They were just thinking about how to survive tomorrow.
Right, survival, straight up. And that's where the disconnect happens, because if you're only talking at people and telling them what the talking point is, you're not taking enough time to hear, oh, people want us to have a vision, a plan of how we're going to make families better off in the next year or two, let alone 4 years. Like, how we're going to make the prices of groceries better, how we're going to make housing more affordable, because we don't have them early COVID, apartment prices. The prices went up.
Yeah.
The prices went up. I also think, you know what? We're not even in the uncancelable section anymore, so I don't even know if I should go here. But
listen,
another thing that I think we Democrats really missed the ball on in this last election was overpromising. I remember after they did the switcheroo to Kamala Harris, and she'd been raising all that money and people were super, super excited. I thought, like, okay, wait, she might actually have this in the bag. And it was like one of the first debates, or maybe the DNC stage or something. And she was saying a bunch of stuff that I was like, not only is this not like, she was saying things that sound really good. We're going to restore Roe. What is that? That's not possible. That's literally not a thing. If you know anything about politics, Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court case. Once it's repealed, there's no bringing it back. Unless Congress is about to introduce something that you're going to pass through that is also called Roe. Like, that's not a thing. So you're just saying things that sound nice, that are catchphrases. And that's not the catchphrases that people want. People wanted to hear, you're going to make life easier for us. We're going to get...
Or like, once those Supreme Court decisions were made on a president has presidential power, actually just doing what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the past few months have been like, if Donald Trump, it feels like we're in 2026.
Yes.
If Donald Trump could do all of this within 4 to 5 months, President Biden could have forgiven student loans. He could have done a lot of things. And I think he was playing a noble game with people who just weren't noble.
And that's a big thing too. So it's like, you're promising things that you can't do. But then whenever y'all get in office, y'all are like, my hands are tied, I can't do it. And I'm like, if you're going to do that in 5 months, tell people now, listen, it's going to be tough. Even if I get elected, I'm not going to have the support of Congress. But here's what I can do. I'm going to do all these executive orders because that is what's within my power. I think we're realizing, like, the Republicans are playing hardball and we are playing catch. Yeah. We just like, here, you what? No, you didn't catch. Okay, my bad. And it's like, okay, well, whenever y'all get in, y'all don't do nothing. And whenever I'm like, this is the longest 100 days of my life. Trump has done so much. I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, you teaching me, I have a political science degree from Yale. He's teaching me stuff that I didn't know presidents could do. And Democrats getting off.
I didn't know a president didn't know that they had to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
We got to talk to lawyers to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
It's not a requirement for us to uphold the U.S. Constitution or listen to the Supreme Court. Listen, we could have the student loans forgiven. We could have just said no, affirmative action and DEI exists.
And that was my thing. I was like, not for nothing, but even if Biden hadn't done anything from 2020 to 2022, if in 2023 he had legalized marijuana, I think niggas would have... Sorry. Oops, my bad. Oh my God. Let me do it.
I mean, they probably would have voted.
I'm like, all you had to do was legalize marijuana. We would have been too high to even be worried about it.
First of all, hold on. Brandon's face when you said the N-word. We're sorry, Brandon. Brandon's like, do I have to edit that?
Right. I was like, if you got to edit that out, people. But like, legit, like, I'm like, if you gave people a Hail Mary at the last minute, one or two things that would have been nice. You were talking about inflation for a year and a half while people are feeling broker than ever, talking about we've fixed this economy and don't nobody feel like it's fixed. And you thought that was a good strategy? Like, it was just so confusing. Like, which white consultant told you that was a good talking point? It was just not good. It was just not good at all. And I hope we're learning from that. I hope come the midterms, that we really learn. And I hope by the presidential election, we get a better strategy together. Because also, like, Trump is bad is not a good slogan for the Democratic Party. We know. What are you going to do, though?
Yeah.
We need to have a better vision. Because if all we're ever doing is holding them back, that we're all on defense. That's not going to win us nothing. People want to know, like, oh, yeah, I'm voting this person in, and they're going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm hyped. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
Because I knew people who I went to high school with, black and brown, who were like, I'm voting for Trump because I got Trump checks. They were still off that $1,200. I'm like, what did $1,200 do
That
for you?
$1,200 didn't do nothing. It was gone. It was gone
What
the next day.
did you do with $1,200 that you are still hyped about?
It was gone the next day.
But it was something that they could point to. And if Democrats don't have something people can point to, except we are the upholders of democracy and people don't even feel like they're in a democracy.
And that's the thing. A lot of people, specifically young people, don't see it. And they're not really big on the Republican or the Democratic Party. Yeah. But I think what makes the more conservative party more invigorating and exciting for them is that they're doing what they said they're going to do.
Yep.
And they're doing it with the quickness.
Yep.
And we're just always left behind, like you were saying. But I wanted to ask you some questions for my favorite card game. This card game was actually created by a young Gen Z Black woman.
One young Gen Z
and
Black
so
woman.
I decided I'm going to make this a little part of my show just so we can boost Mecca.
Okay.
You know, this card game asks so many like really, really cool questions. And so I'm going to choose about 2 or 3 of these.
Okay.
And
why do I feel scared? It's not even like a drinking game, but
no, it's not a drinking game, girl. We can get you some. I'm being funny. We can get you some, girl. We can find something. We're in Atlanta.
Period.
Okay. Would you rather? So this is fun. This is fun. Okay. Would you rather have all of your messages exposed or all of your photos exposed?
All of my photos exposed.
Same. Because, girl, it gets crazy in the
crazy in the group chat, child.
Crazy, girl.
In the group chat.
Talk about cancelable.
Okay.
Canceled. Mary's canceled. We got Mark, our comms person here. Mark would be right. Sleep. Mark wouldn't be able to eat. He would be like, what are we going to do?
Going underground.
Yeah, literally, for life. We be sending you back to Africa, girl. We send you back to Africa. Okay.
Listen, send me. That's what it takes. Get my flight ready.
Okay, so when you need to reset, reconnect, or relax, what do you do? What does that look like for Brea?
Ooh, okay. I'm such a nerd. I really love books. I will sit and read all day. Even yesterday, like I was sitting and reading Tina Knowles' new memoir, Matriarch, and like 300 pages in one day. I love to read. On a regular day, I love to smoke, as well. That's a good reliever. Anything involving food, especially like a crab boil or something, really gets me going. But also just good people. Like I think what a lot of us are craving right now is just actual community. And I just love like when you're around people that make you like belly laugh, slap the knee, fall out the chair, just like remind you what you're here for. And then lastly, nature. Anytime I could just feet in the grass, swimming in some water, breathing in some good fresh air. Like, I love that.
Okay. What do you think one thing men and women will never agree on?
Ooh.
I think they don't really know what a traditional man is. At least not this generation, child. Not this generation. They don't even know what that means. What is a traditional man?
What do men and women never agree on?
They don't know.
Dang. Okay, I think men and women are never going to agree on just like who does more. I think there's so many men who are just like, I'm just not seeing. And then the women are like, okay, but you're not seeing me. Like, I think the labor just gets so erased by each side.
And I blame podcast culture.
Facts.
This whole thing is just putting a rift between our communities, and it's weird. That's why I say, this whole traditional man, alpha male, beta woman,
high value woman.
This is all pop the balloon to me. How about we just live in our lives and we just need somebody to live it with?
Right.
Because we're fine.
And it's going to look different for every person. Like this idea that there's like one archetype that's going to work for every couple is just insane. It's not realistic at all. Everyone has different needs. It's
honestly.
Okay.
So from that, I want you to tell me if you think this is a red flag or a green flag.
Okay.
Cash reparations or land reparations?
Wait, I'm choosing one of those?
Yeah.
Or I'm
red flag, green flag. Would you prefer cash reparations or land reparations or both?
Land reparations.
Land?
Land.
Why do you say land?
They're not going to give a big enough cash check to make a difference. Land is so valuable. If you even give each of us 1 acre, that's worth tens of thousands of dollars now. That could become worth tens of thousands of dollars more with each year as it goes by. And it's the opportunity to put something on it. I could put a building on it. I could put a business on it. I could put an estate for my family on it. It's just a lot more of a blank slate. I think any cash check they're giving out could be gone like this in bills, in debt, in whatever. But land is like, that's going to grow with time.
I'll ask you two more and then I'll ask my closing question. Influencers making protest merch but never showing up in real life.
Red flag.
Red flag.
Red freaking flag.
Okay.
How you profiting off the movement that you're not part of?
Listen, movements building intergenerational leadership instead of gatekeeping knowledge.
Oh, that's a green flag. Yes.
That's a green flag. Even though I've seen a lot more red flag of that than green flag.
Really? Well, I just feel like sometimes the gatekeeping that I see is someone older who doesn't know how to pass a baton. And it's just like, if you could do it by yourself, I wouldn't need to ask for the baton. And I'm not saying I could do it by myself, but I'm just saying, like, teach me what you know. Let me use the new technology and platforms and, like, you know, culture methods that I have and do something powerful. Like, podcasts were not a thing when our elders were organizing, but this is such a powerful platform to have conversations with people. And if someone was gatekeeping and being like, you're not old enough to be telling nobody nothing, like, dang, okay. So I don't know. I'm just big on, like, learning from elders and elders learning from us.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, and before we go, I really want to pull back and talk a little bit more about, we'll wrap up ending with legacy. What does it all mean? Land, justice, protest, power. And what does it mean for us as we look ahead? You know, utilizing your final thoughts, what's something that you're unlearning now, and how can listeners move from I'm overwhelmed to I'm in this?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's easy to be overwhelmed right now. That's for sure. I think being in community with other people who are like-hearted and like-minded really helps, because when you need a break, you can take it without feeling the guilt of, like, oh, everything is falling on me. I have to do X, Y, and Z. It's okay to take a break, to love up on your people, to love up on yourself, and to know that the work will always be here. Like, you know, one of the people that I'm lucky enough to have been mentored by was Terry Belafonte. When I met him, he was in his 80s. He passed away in his 90s. Like, he had been doing this work since he was in his 20s and 30s. So to think that I have to get it all done in this year or the next 4 years is just going to burn me out. I have to be able to take breaks when I need them, but also, like, pass that baton to someone else who's ready to step up while I need a break. And I think that's the beautiful thing about legacy, is this idea that I don't take it with me when I die. I don't take it with me when I need the break. I pass it on, and I hope that there's someone ready to keep up with what I have going. I think that's the beautiful thing about land legacies, of, like, wealth legacies, but also about movement legacies, and just making sure that we are, one of the principles of Kwanzaa that I love so much is Kumba, which is we leave the world better than we received it. And we do as much as we can with all that we can to leave the world better than we received it, something like that. And I really love that idea of, my job is not perfection. My job is not to build the house myself. My job is to add as many bricks as possible, and then let somebody add their bricks, and let somebody else add their bricks, and see how big this house gets when we're all doing our part. And there are so many parts to do. If you're a culture worker, an artist, if you're a writer, if you're a direct action in the streets person, if you're a fundraiser, if you're a nonprofit leader and you're building out the infrastructure and the operations, like, there's so much work to be done. I can't do it all, but I'm just so glad to know that there's people like you doing some things that I'm like, okay, I don't got to do that because Mary-Pat doing that. Like, she on it. All I need to do is tell people to watch her and pay attention to that and focus on her work, and vice versa. And, like, we gonna be all right, to bring it back to Kendrick.
Well, thank you so much, Brea. You all, if you have not already, please go out and support Brea in her amazing book, Rooted: The American Legacy of Land Theft and the Modern Movement for Black Land Ownership. Brea, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate you. And for those watching, we will see you on our next episode. Bye-bye.